So you are thinking about getting an unpainted community set, but maybe you're not sure of your painting skills or just need a little bit of guidance. Well, that's what this video is for. I'm going to address some common questions that people have sent in regarding painting these figures, and I'm also going to share with you some insights that I've learned in painting many and many of these figures. So let's go ahead and get started. The most common question I get is, what do you use to paint the figures? I use just plain acrylic paints that can be found at pretty much any big box store. You can see a couple different brands that I use. On the left-hand side is Vallejo. This is a model paint that can be used for airbrushing. I do use this nice paint for the Caucasian flesh tone. I just like the way it looks. It doesn't look as like chalky and pale. So that's really the only fancy paint that I use. And then paintbrushes, again, these can be found at most big box stores. You're going to want smaller paintbrushes. In fact, a couple of my smallest ones are used for nail art, for some of those fine details. This size is probably the biggest that you'd need for paint. A base coat is just the very first coat of paint that you put on a figure, and it's usually all one color. Why it's important is because acrylic paint is slightly translucent, so it's going to help you get better coverage, and you're going to have to do less coats of the main colors. I either use Caucasian flesh tone like peach or a tan color. I'll show in just a little bit which specific colors I like for each figure for my base colors. But you can see here that I've just covered all of the figure with either that peach color or a tan color. And that's going to save me a lot of work with some of those other colors. Some colors are just more translucent than others. For example, if you have a figure that uses yellow, red, white, if you don't use a base color, you're going to be having to put a lot of layers of that color on. So base colors just save you a lot of time. And for all the figures, if you stick with either peach or tan, you're going to be in good shape. So on this figure, I've done the base coat in tan and peach, and now I'm starting to paint the main colors. The purple already has one coat, and you can see the translucent effect that I was talking about. So now I'm starting to put a second layer of purple on, and you can see that the coverage is a lot more opaque. A lot of that comes from the tan base layer that's underneath. If I didn't use the tan base layer, I would probably need at least a third coat, maybe a fourth coat of that purple. So take the time to apply a base coat layer because it will save you a lot of time with the main colors. Here are the base coat colors that I like to use for each figure. And just note that I cheated and printed Chang in white just to save myself time. Your figure will be gray, just like the others. So for Annie, Jeff, and Chang, I cover the figure with a Caucasian skin tone base coat. For Abed and the pterodactyl, all tan is the base coat color that I use. For Pierce and Duncan, I use both Caucasian skin tone on the face and then tan for the body. That'll help cover some of those darker colors. For Shirley and Troy, I do brown and tan for their base coats, although all tan works just fine. And then for Britta, she's kind of a special case. I do Caucasian skin tone for her face and her hair, especially for the yellow color hair. And then you can use gray as a base coat. And here's what the base coated figures look like. A couple of the characters have gold accents. And for these, you're going to want to get a metallic gold. I use champagne gold, but something more brassy colored would be fine. It's totally up to you, but definitely get a metallic paint for these accents. A tip that I have learned the hard way with painting gold metallic paint is to use a really dark base coat. I almost always use black. So for Duncan here, the tip of his wand is the little star. I've painted black. And now I'm going to start painting the gold over top of it. You would think that a lighter base coat would be better, but just what I've learned the hard way and from reading, using a black or dark colored base coat is so much more effective for the gold colored paint. Honestly, with a dark undercoat, you'll just need maybe 2 coats is all. So for the one-off gold accents, black is fine, but the purple on Duncan is dark enough to get the little stars and swirl effects. And then on the front of his dress, coat, whatever it's called, the darker purple is fine for the Christmas tree accent and for his belt. The other figures that you're going to want to use gold paint on, Annie, for the screw on her back, I usually paint that black. Troy, he has some gold details, and honestly, I just cover those over with the blue of his uniform, and then that's dark enough to act as a good base coat. And then Shirley has the pins on her diaper. Those are you can do those with black, but I think those are the only characters that you're going to use gold paint on. So, moral of the story, you use a dark base coat when painting with gold metallic paint, and it'll just save you a lot of coats and a lot of time. Abed's skin tone has always been difficult for me to figure out how to match. In the beginning, on some of my earliest attempts, I would try and use tan, which did not work very well. What I discovered is orange is the best place to start with to get really good matching skin tone for Abed. So Danny Pudi, the actor who plays Abed, he's Indian Polish American, and for people of Indian descent, like I said, orange works really great as the starting base for the color. So start with orange and then add a little bit of brown, mix it in, and go from there. If it needs to be a little darker, add some more brown. If you get too dark, then just add some orange to lighten it up. But starting with orange will give you a much better color match for Abed's skin tone. So another question I get asked a lot is, how do you do the eyes? The eyeball, the little sparkle in the eye, it's so little. And yes, you can do that with a brush, but a sneaky little trick that I learned from a friend is actually to use the back end of the brush if it's rounded. And you just dip that in paint, and then you can kind of use that as a stamp, and that will almost always give you a nice round shape. If at first the size of the circle isn't big enough, then you can just keep stamping to increase the area of the circle for the iris. And then sometimes I will use the brush to do some minor corrections. But yeah, using the back side of the brush makes doing the eyes so much easier. Then to do the pupil and then the little sparkle in the eye, I use a toothpick. So just like you did with the iris, you're going to use a toothpick and kind of stamp on a circle shape. And again, if what you end up with at first is too small, then just keep stamping to increase the diameter of the circle you're making. I probably should have used one of the characters with blue eyes so it's a little more apparent, but the pupils are there. And then just a really light touch with the toothpick with white paint for the sparkle in the eye. Another question I get a lot is what kind of glue do I use to connect the figures to the bases? While super glue does work, it's a little bit more fragile, so I prefer a strong craft glue, and I personally use Duco cement. And it's going to work really good for setting up pretty quickly, and then after a couple hours you're going to have a really strong hold. So a couple of the characters can stand by themselves, so all you got to do is put a little bit of glue on, get them positioned on the base, and then just let that glue set. Pretty easy. There's a couple characters that aren't self-balancing and are a little bit harder to glue because of this. Probably the hardest one is Annie here. But what I do is just use two or three of my paint bottles to help balance and hold the figure. And then I'll apply the glue and the figure will be held in place so the glue can set. But using 2 glue bottles should work for Annie, the pterodactyl, Shirley, and some of the other figures that don't balance as well. So I hope you found this video helpful, and I hope that these tips and tricks help give you the confidence to feel like you can give painting these figures a try. It really is not that hard. I'm honestly not that great of a painter, but the most important thing is that you just have fun doing it and believe in your ability to paint these figures. You do not have to like or subscribe to anything. If you're watching this video, it's probably because you're interested in buying these figures. So I appreciate that and wish you the best of luck with painting them. If you do have any questions that I didn't cover in the video, feel free to get in touch with me and I'll try and help you out as much as I can. Have fun.